Welcome, everybody. What a beautiful day for a picnic. Please be silent with your thoughts and join as one while we honour the warriors, past, present and future, that have dedicated their lives and will dedicate their lives to the well-being of the planet and of the future generations. Go on, bro.
Thank you, sister. And we do acknowledge all sovereign nations. We are all sovereign autonomous beings. So I'd just like to read a few words from my sister who couldn't make it today. She says, our family, along with many others, having been fighting the good fight here in this country for half a century. My parents and grandparents we've seen locked up and incarcerated for doing exactly what we're doing here today. Standing up and fighting for what we believe in, fighting for what we know is right. And we just so happen to be a massive family, healthy, unvaccinated family for generations. Pro-choicers and freedom fighters. We come from the oldest people on the planet, and there are very few of us who can declare we lived in peace, balance and harmony. Exactly what is needed right here, right now, more than ever. We lived through not only invasion and massacres, but ice ages, floods, fires, darkness. We know a thing or two about survival after the thousands and thousands of years of being in tune with Mother Nature and abiding by the natural laws of the universe, as many of our brothers and sisters here today and Indigenous people around the world. It's such a humbling experience to be able to share these words on behalf of my family, because we believe the role of Indigenous people, First Nations people, sovereign autonomous people across this world is in fact to actually liberate not just ourselves, but to liberate others from these oppressive values of greed and fear of the other, because they are the things that ultimately are running the whole human race into the ground. And as many of you here today know, this struggle is taxing and toxic. The attacks never ending and the corruption runs deeper than ever. But do you realise it would only take less than 10% of us to become self-sufficient for the elite's game to be over? That's it. exactly how fragile their power structures are. And as observers, we feel the only way to win this once and for all is to hit them where it hurts the most, in the pocket. So through organised regular days of divesting, starting on the last Friday of every month or even weekly for the hardcore change makers, global boycotts of mainstream media, shopping centres, chemists, banks and big petrol chains. I think that's the only way that we'll actually get our point across. But the true history of this country and many others is hidden from us all on purpose, to keep us from tapping into our ancient wisdom needed to navigate these treacherous times. And as the ultimate humanitarians, the ultimate environmentalists, conservationists, strategic planners, healers, we feel it's time to return to our old ways. Time to sit with our elders, with our spirit guides. Because out of darkness comes light. And everyone... So now is the time to organise around things that matter to all of us, as we did before invasion over 250 years ago. So it's good that we can come together on common ground with mutual respect. And we pay our respects to the organisers. Thanks, brother, for all the hard work. I know it's not easy, especially in times like this. But let's remember those gone before us. And I'll leave you with the quote that my grandmother Maureen Watson would say. Through your actions today, will you be an honourable ancestor to the children of the future? And I take that as a yes from each and every single one of you here today. Because just by being here today shows that we are not going to sit and suffer in silence. We are going to stand and fight for our children, for your children, for future generations, and that is our obligation. Because what is the opposite to divide and conquer? Unite. The opposite to that Western mentality that we've been brainwashed and conditioned to, that Western mentality of divide and conquer. The opposite to that is what our people have known since millennia. It is to love and connect and unite, and that's what we're all doing here today, so thank you very much. Guatemala, go away.
Everybody here at the back? You want to come closer to the front and give us a big hug? Man, I'm pumped. I thought I was going to be a lot more nervous, but I'm a little bit nervous, but mainly pumped. The energy I'm getting off the crowd right now is awesome, man. Good work, everyone. So everyone here has already done the hard part, which is getting off the bums and getting out here today to join the people as one. So congratulations to everyone here. That's the good news. The bad news is we have a monumental task ahead of us. If you're here, you know we're in trouble. We are under attack. Not just Australians, but the people of the world. We are under attack. We're under attack by the sinister agenda of the private corporations and the families that control our governments. Our governments are under control. This whole scamdemic is nothing but a tool being used to create fear through the mainstream media. Through the fear generated by the mainstream media, people are being persuaded to accept these illogical, irrational, and absurd draconian control measures.
Absolutely.
These control measures are not aimed at protecting us. Don't be fooled. They're aimed at the oppression and the total control of the people. They don't care about us. Now I'm about to speak to police. And as I look around, there are many of the police officers here today. I'd like to thank them for allowing us to exercise our rights in a peaceful fashion. Thank you, guys. I'm sure if we treat them with respect, they will reciprocate. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that their job is dangerous and that their job requires them to uphold the law. There has to be a certain amount of respect shown to anyone that upholds the law. When that person finds that they are being ordered to suppress the people that are standing up for the future of our younger generations, or that they are being ordered to uphold a law that no longer makes sense, then that person has a moral dilemma that needs dealing with. And none of these COVID laws make sense. There's been 100 deaths out of a population of 26 million. Just 100. That's 0.00003% of the population.
How do we know they're even corona?
Now what's quarantine? Quarantine is when you take people with a disease and isolate them. Never has quarantine meant locking up 26 million people indoors. You don't lock a country down unless there is a sinister agenda behind it. If anything, you isolate the at-risk and the susceptible members of the population and you support them as a community. As a result of these ridiculous lockdowns, people have lost their jobs, people have lost their businesses, people have lost their homes, people have committed suicide, and domestic violence has skyrocketed. 100 deaths. Supposed deaths, I should add. It is completely obvious that the fallout from these sinister control measures have resulted in far greater damage than the virus itself.
The hell's up with that?
The average age of the deceased was 80 years old. Almost every one of the deceased had pre-existing serious underlying issues. There's a big difference between dying from COVID and dying with COVID. And doctors from around the world have stated that they have received documents from the health departments and the CDC explaining that even if they have a tiny suspicion that the patient may have COVID, there is no need to perform a diagnosis test, simply write down COVID-19 on the death certificate. To jack in the numbers, guys. Why? Why would a government that cares about its people have to inflate numbers and make things up? The flu takes at least 10 times more lives than COVID has in Australia every single year. Where are the lockdowns for the flu? 4,000 deaths from accidental falls every year in Australia, just to put things into perspective. 4,000 deaths from accidental falls. 100 have died from COVID. Now consider the spike in suicides we have seen as a result of these unwarranted lockdowns. Modelling from the University of Sydney's Brain and Mind Centre has forecast the financial and physiological toll could result in an extra 750 to 1,500 deaths every year just from this. It's 15 times higher than the people who died from COVID. 15 times. So how are they managing to pull off a lockdown of the entire planet? The mainstream media. Everyone has a TV, and that's their way in, to plonk their asses onto the couch next to our children.
Turn that shit off!
They literally use the TV to find a way into your living room. Take the TV off your wall and throw it in the trash. It serves you no purpose. The CIA's Operation Mockingbird was a project in which they manipulated the media to sway public opinion. It was brainwashing. And it's still being used today, quite obviously. I would like to share this quote with you. The media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. And that's power. Because they control the minds of the masses. That was a quote from a prominent figure in the 60s, and it's more relevant today than it ever has been. Guys, regardless of all this, we are in the singularly most pivotal time in human history, and we need to take the power back for ourselves. No one's going to do it for us. No one's going to do it for us. It comes down to each and every one of us here today, spreading the word and uniting as one. Forget your differences, stand together. And and rise as the people need to rise right now.
We are the 99%.
To do this, we have to become unreliant on the system that we all have been persuaded to rely so heavily upon. And this has to start from the grassroots up, almost literally from the grassroots. We have to grow our own food and trade among ourselves without any money swapping hands. Money is the devil. Whether you live in a small city block or in the country, you can grow your own food. Trade it with your neighbours and be generous. How many people here would survive more than a month on their own if they closed the supermarkets tomorrow?
No one.
Not me. And when I had this realisation, I went to meet my father-in-law in the high mountains of New Zealand. I told him I want to get myself a bow and an arrow and a gun, and I will learn how to hunt. Now he's been wanting to take me hunting for the last decade, and I've never really been interested. So when I told him this, he looked at me with tears in his eyes. Mind you, he'd spoken exactly 7 words to me in all of the 10 years previous. So he looked at me with tears running down his cheeks and he states, "You are now my son." Oh, cheers. And since I've had that realisation, I've been putting in vegetable patches, fruit trees. Well, actually, it's mainly been my wife. I just stand nearby and get up on which she puts the fruit trees in the wrong spot. We've dug hundreds of metres of trenches to run irrigation so we can pump water from the river. And this is the whole reason why we moved further from the city and further away from work, so my family can have this more natural type of lifestyle. And those are the decisions we all need to start thinking about making. I'm fairly certain if we move, it'll be onto multiple occupancy with other beautiful families that we trust and can build a proper community with. Because that's what's life about, isn't it? Not earning bucket loads of money and buying gold chains and Ferraris. We've been lied to. We've been taught to worship materialism. They've turned us into obedient consumerists. What we need to be doing is restoring our connection with ourselves, with each other, with the land, and spiritually. This will bring true happiness and meaning to our lives. And depression and sickness will become a thing of the past. Again, guys, thanks for coming down. Thank you for listening to me speak.
Thank you.
And we will win this battle. To win this battle, we put aside our minute differences and learn to stand as one. In fact, that's the only way we'll win. I love you all. Alright, now just before I introduce the next speaker, a big part of these lockdowns around the world has been the accelerated rollout of 5G. Many people get angry at people who mention anything bad about 5G. They say things like, "There's nothing wrong with 5G, there's no proof that it's dangerous." Firstly, there are actually thousands of studies from professionals around the world that demonstrate there are many dangers regarding 5G technology. But that's not the main point. The main point is there is not one study that your government can show you and prove that 5G is safe. There's not one study that the telco companies this come out to show us that proves that it's safe. They can't show us because it's not safe, otherwise they'd be showing us. They're lying. Why would a government that cares about its people insist on rolling out a technology that has not been proven to be safe? Maybe they don't care about us. Choose our children's health over fast internet. And to speak more about this issue, I'd like to introduce my man over here, Paul.
Hello everyone.
Looking flash, brother.
It's good to be here. As my brother mentioned previously, many people have concerns about electromagnetic radiation, etc. that's associated with 5G or 5th generation technology. Electromagnetic radiation is really only the byproduct. The agenda is actually mass surveillance. One day, as the world depression deepens, people wake up to find the government has granted itself extraordinary powers due to an emergency. Freedom of movement, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech are gone. Censorship is ruthlessly enforced. Questioning the government or its actions is forbidden. This government works with a US-led company to track everyone in the country. This was Germany in 1933, and you don't have to look hard to see the same thing happening today. History does not repeat, but it does rhyme. And if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to relearn it the hard way. In the trials after the war, the Germans were charged for state crimes against democracy. Politicians, press, police, public servants, military personnel were all guilty, and I was just doing what I was told was not an excuse. They say that the tracking and surveillance is for our safety. But the Germans were told this also.
It's for your safety.
Who will watch the watchers? Who guards against the state crimes against democracy? We, the people. They say that they need to read everything that we do on the internet to catch the pedophiles. We say, why do powerful pedophiles walk from the highest courts in the land? Why then has a police report that names 28 high-ranking politicians, judges and lawyers as suspected pedophiles been made secret by the Royal Commission for the next 90 years? Who watches the watchers?
Off with their heads.
Who guards against the state crimes against democracy? We, the people. They say you don't need encryption if you have nothing to hide. We say you don't need to spy on me if I have nothing to hide from. Who watches the watchers? Who guards against state crimes against democracy? We, the people. They say trust us with secret courts, secret cabinets, secret police, black budgets and unlimited surveillance powers. We say, do I look like I was born yesterday? I know I have nothing to hide. What are you up to?
Have you seen Milosh?
First they removed the means of free speech. Your videos are pulled from the internet and your posts are
As
blocked.
soon as I started mentioning them,
All
it said
messages
bad.
are read.
And I started saying what I had to say.
Everything
They
you
got on the phone
send,
straight away and started
all
fussing.
calls on the phone listened to, all speech in public
I need Milosh
monitored.
with me so I can film.
Then they make speech a crime. No criticism is allowed, no dissent. No one will hold them to account or oppose them. Who watches the watchers? Who guards against state crime against democracy? We, the people. When this is done, will you stand there and say, I was just doing what I was told? Or will you stand and say, I did what I knew was right? Now, we don't face the erosion of our liberty, of free speech, of freedom of assembly, of freedom of movement, of freedom of association and of freedom of thought. No, today we face the removal of those liberties and with them our ability to guard against state crimes against democracy. We, the people, must have freedom to think and to speak according to our conscience. We watch the watchers. We guard against state crimes against democracy. It is your duty as a citizen of a democracy to use the Signal app to encrypt your calls and use disappearing messages. It is your duty as a citizen of a democracy to use end-to-end encryption on mobile. It is your duty as a citizen of a democracy to use Proton email service and the Proton VPNs. It is your duty as a citizen of a democracy to use Tor browser. You have nothing to hide. And if the state can be trusted, then you have nothing to hide from either. It is your civic duty to watch the watchers. It is your civic duty to guard against the state crimes against democracy. It is your duty to demand, to use and to defend encryption that cannot be perverted by state crimes against democracy. And it is the duty of the state to protect that. History does not repeat, but it does rhyme. We woke up today in a world that looks like the world that led to some of the biggest state crimes against democracy of the 20th century. It is up to us to make sure that they are not repeated. Use encryption now. In closing, I want to be clear. This is not to compare our government to the 20th century government of Germany. It is a statement of a key lesson of that century. In a democracy, it is your duty to detect, to resist a slide into state crimes against democracy. We do this by securing our democracy from within. Use encryption now. Let me say that again. Use encryption now. If you only take one thing away from today, use encryption now. Thank you.
So we keep hearing things won't return to normal until the COVID-19 vaccine is available. A vaccine that is skipping animal testing and going straight to human testing. A vaccine being made for a virus that has almost disappeared totally by itself. They are in a race to get the vaccine out before the virus disappears by itself. Why would they be so keen to get a vaccine out for a virus that has proven to be much weaker than the flu that we experience every single year? The world leaders spoke about the world being overpopulated and people like Bill Gates. People like Bill Gates are self-confessed globalists and often mention they are aiming to reduce the population. Could the COVID-19 vaccine be the final blow to the fertility of our future generations? The gold standard in science is a double-blind, inert placebo. Not one vaccine in history of poisons has ever used a double-blind, inert placebo. Inert meaning inactive, something like saline or sugar pills. When they test a new vaccine, they test it against another vaccine or an adjuvant. So when the vaccine they are tested returns the same amount of side effects, often including deaths in the trials, compared to the control group, they are able to say that there was no increase in harm, therefore it passes our safety tests. What a load of crap that is. The science behind vaccines is the most biased, corrupt and fraudulent science that the world has ever seen. In fact, the whole pharmaceutical industry is built on harm and repeat customers. They will never look to cure the underlying issue, but always look to sell you drugs and treat the symptoms. To speak to you more about the vaccine industry is Anita Hafemeister, President of the Australian Vaccination Network. I think